Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my man who loves a big giant ape. It's Frank. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. I wasn't sure if you were going to call me the eighth wonder of the world.
Dang it. I should plan these things better.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great out here in the jungle. How are you?
Oh, I am doing just spectacularly, my friend, because I'm drinking a nice beer. But first, tell me what you're drinking.
Ooh, okay. Well, I am giving the summer beers a rest for just a minute because
Heading straight into winter? Good
no,
idea.
not even. I love a good Belgian ale. I love Belgians. I especially love anything like an Abbey ale. Anything that's made by monks, it's good for me. And so I'm drinking a Leffe brown ale.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's an oldie but a goodie, and one that I
Leffe,
enjoy
it's
a
the
lot.
right choice.
Hey, good work.
Thank you. I am drinking a Captain's Daughter from the Grey Sail Brewing Company of Rhode Island.
Ooh.
It is a India Pale Ale. It is a double IPA.
Wow. Now you're not usually like a huge IPA fan, so double IPA is
not
saying
usually,
something.
but this one is real crisp and not incredibly bitter.
Okay.
So it doesn't like punch you in the mouth. Like if, like I say, like a giant gorilla came up and punched you in the mouth, it doesn't feel like that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel like normal Captain. It doesn't feel like normal double IPA that way, and I think that's why I like it. So
Gotcha.
like you can drink it in the summer and feel refreshed, which is important.
That is important. I agree. That's one of the
Mm-hmm.
most important things. So that's great. That is
Very good.
great. That's
Is
great. So why are we talking about a monster movie from the 30s?
We are talking about a monster movie from the 30s, a.k.a. King Kong, because it is one of the greatest movies of all time, Frank.
It really is.
And it's great. It is, one would say, King Kong is actually the eighth wonder of the world, but the story and not just the thing. So, because this movie has spawned a culture unto itself, right? King Kong was first a film. Well, it was going to be a film, and then they were like, let's release a book first. So let's get Edgar Wallace. Let's get Edgar Wallace to write it. Miriam C. Cooper was like, yeah, I'm going to make people write this book. And then they released King Kong like off of the hype of the book, even though the book was just to hype the movie.
So the movie was conceived first. They released a book to get people excited, and then the movie came out. That's very interesting. I didn't know that little piece of film.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Dallas W. Lovelace was the guy to write the book, but he died I think he died right after finishing the book, or like right before he finished. So then they had to so Edgar Wallace and Marion C. Cooper like kind of finished it. And so, but part of his like will was like, or his estate, or the agreement was like, you have to give Lovelace credit, even though a lot of the stuff that ended up going in the novel ended up being contributions for stuff in the King Kong script after he died. So it's a way interesting like bit of history, how King Kong kind of came to be. Like, so there was this woman named Ruth Rose who did punch-ups on the script, and like some of the biggest elements of King Kong that you think of come from Ruth Rose. All the dialogue is hers. It's like, yeah. So that's pretty cool. which is it's pretty nifty. Marion C. Cooper. Do you know anything about Marion C. Cooper? The guy.
I don't.
So he was a World War I fighter pilot. Okay, and he got shot down, prison camp, the whole 9 yards. Kind of lived for adventure after that, and made a bunch of documentaries. I quote unquote documentaries, because one of them, most famously, 1929 Best Picture nominee, was called Chang, and it was a documentary about they captured tigers and elephants and monkeys and filmed them on a set, kind of that they had crafted in the jungle to be look what nature is like. But it wasn't really what nature is like, because they basically made the animals do stuff.
Right.
They captured them.
So it was staged.
Right. It would be going to a zoo and be look at nature. It's not quite. It is nature, but it's not quite nature. So it's crazy. So the seeds of King Kong, this idea of going into the jungle and exploring and high adventure, and that's all stuff that he really wanted to do. So when it came to making King Kong, Carl Denham, one of the leads of the story, the filmmaker, is basically Marion C. Cooper.
Got it. Yep.
I want to go and live an adventure, and I want to capture the beast, and I want to do all this stuff. He's basically an avatar for himself. He had an immense self-awareness to know this is the kind of guy that I am and what I want to do. One of his early ideas for King Kong was to capture a Komodo dragon and a gorilla and film them fighting.
Oh, wow. So he really took his own adventures and turned it into this highly sort of fantasized, exaggerated version of it, of sizing everything up from a lizard to a dinosaur, and from a gorilla to whatever you call Kong.
a bigger
gorilla. Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Cool.
I know, it's pretty cool. And I mean, I think he would have gone wild to think about ideas so if I was reading Sapiens, the history of humankind by Dr. Harari. I don't know if you've heard it. It's excellent. Would recommend.
I've heard of it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
You can read up to learn more about it.
Okay. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I've heard it. Maybe I heard you mention it. Yeah.
Maybe. But in that he talks about mankind being the reason things go extinct apart from the dinosaurs. It's basically mankind is the reason why nothing exists. Animals die. And there's working scientific theory to say, if people had never discovered Australia, so if indigenous tribes had not gone over in boats to Australia, then prehistoric animals would still be living on that island untouched by people, because there would be no reason for them to die off. So not dinosaurs, but the mammals after that. So you're talking, your giant sloths and your great elks and, the beasts that would be as big as Kong, but prehistoric mammals.
That's a very interesting idea. Yeah, that does make sense. Anything that the climate didn't kill would have survived. You're right.
Would have survived. There was no reason for it to die off, because people are the reason that those animals don't exist anymore. They were hunted to extinction, which is really what King Kong is really about, right? It's this man versus nature, but it's man's need to conquer nature.
Yes.
That's why maybe King Kong is still so relevant, because it's basically just global warming.
No, absolutely.
Let's conquer the world and then see what happens. Oh no, we messed up. Whoopsie.
Right.
That's our bad.
Yeah. Totally.
We're beautiful, but we killed the beast, right?
Yes. Yeah. It depends how beautiful you think we are, but yeah, I agree. That is what the lesson that it's giving us, and I agree. That's why it's still relevant. That plus the sheer spectacle of it, right? It captures the imagination, the idea of it's the Beauty and the Beast story aspect of it never really rang true for me. It always felt like a little bit of a Hollywood stretch, and I let it go, especially in the 1933 version. But
in 33, she's really a damsel in distress.
Yeah,
and he's a monster.
Yes.
He's not overly sympathetic. He's not a very sympathetic creature in the 33 version. We place that on him, But if you watch it just to watch it, he's really just. I come and I take Anne, and then we fight some dinosaurs, and then they get captured, and then I die. But there is no real relationship between them.
No.
Apart from, oh, she's pretty, and I'm a giant gorilla.
Yeah, that's really it. Which is fine. It's interesting to me. And we should talk in a second about like which of the many films we're familiar with and stuff, but and then other iterations too. But it's interesting to me how I've seen the 33 and I've seen the Jack Black version, whatever 05, whatever that was.
The Peter Jackson version, yeah. 05, yeah.
And they're very similar in terms of the major story beats, but they're so different in the way that they dive into that, right? And that how sympathetic Kong is made, and how much of a character he is, rather than a just disaster porn generator.
Right, exactly. That's a weird term to apply to King Kong, but you're right. King Kong is really, the original 33 film is spectacle. That's what it is. It's not really supposed to be anything but that.
No.
It's like, look at the cool stuff we can do with stop motion.
Right.
Like, that's like, look how cool this is. And everyone goes, wow, you're right. It is cool. Like, really cool. Like, I was watching it before this. I watched it last week, and I was still blown away by some of the stuff that the way it was filmed.
It still looks cool.
It still looks cool. I had when I was a kid, I had some dinosaur PBS special, whatever, and there are parts of that special where it's King Kong fighting the Tyrannosaurus, and then Jack Driscoll and Carl Denham shooting the Stegosaurus and things like that, and that just blew my mind away. This is before Jurassic Park came out and things like that, but that was enough to be like, what is this? I need more of it.
Especially if you're a kid who just loves dinosaurs,
right?
When you're a little kid who loves dinosaurs and you haven't seen Jurassic Park yet, this is this is way up there in terms of the coolest thing you've ever seen.
That's right. To me, in some ways, it still is the coolest thing I've ever seen, because dinosaurs are cool, but dinosaurs that still exist is something that's even cooler.
Right. We didn't remake them. They just never died.
Right. Exactly. What I mean, even Jurassic Park is basically Skull Island.
Yeah.
John Hammond creates Skull Island without King Kong off the coast of Costa Rica. Even the big doors that they go through, the Jurassic Park doors, are the original King Kong doors that open up to reveal Kong. It's all I mean, even Dr. Malcolm even says it. What do you got in there, King Kong?
Right.
Ha 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 ha. We're meta. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, it's true. Was the 33 version the first one that you ever saw?
Yes.
Yeah.
33 was the first one I don't know. Apart from last week, I couldn't tell you the last time I'd watched it from start to finish. I just remember, because when he was rampaging New York, I was like, I don't remember some of these shots at all. I when he comes up over he comes up through the rails and he attacks the train. I remember being on the Universal ride in Florida and being like, man, this is cool. King Kong is attacking us. We're in the train. I don't remember this part of the movie, but it's literally in the movie.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I had forgotten about that, but now I vaguely remember the train. Yeah.
What section of what act of the story registers with you the most? I assume it's not Act 1 where they're like, let's go to Skull Island.
No.
And then Act 2 is Skull Island and Act 3 is New York.
Yeah.
So you being from New York, which is New York the section that gets you more than others?
I mean, Act 3, that's the most to me that's the most iconic thing in the movie is him climbing the Empire State Building with Fay Ray and
Darrow, yeah.
And in his hand, and the planes, him swatting the planes and everything. That's the most iconic thing in the movie to me, followed closely by fighting the dinosaurs.
Yep.
Those are the two things, the two images that pop into my head instantly. But the first thing, I picture him on top of the Empire State Building, which was new at the time.
That's right.
It had only been completed
the tallest building in the world.
a couple years earlier. So it was still very new and
Right.
very much.
So if you think about it this way, that building was still in construction when they were constructing the story to King Kong.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
Although it only took a year to build it, so maybe not. If you can believe it only took a
King
year
Kong
to build.
was gestating in Cooper's mind for
That
like
may
a
be true.
decade before.
Okay.
Like there's, he has letters about it and things like that. So he was definitely thinking about it
There you go.
before then. So,
There you go. So for sure.
Which is cool. I didn't know it was only built in a year. That's crazy.
It's nuts. They didn't have unions like we do today, and they was like, work harder. We'll have crews around
build
the
all
clock.
night slaves.
Yeah.
Like shoots rivets at workers.
Yeah.
Build faster.
Yeah, maybe it was a year and change, but it was
Still
about a year. Yeah,
cool building. Great
yeah.
building.
Oh yeah. But yeah, that to me is what. But what? So not being a New Yorker, what is like? What's the thing that stands out to you, or what do you think of when you think King Kong? What's the image?
Skull Island is actually the thing that sticks in my brain more, and that's probably because of that dinosaur PBS special.
Yeah,
the Walter Cronkite special, whatever it was, because I saw those scenes before I saw King Kong in completion. So it just I think that's when I think Kong, I think Skull Island. So when Kong Skull Island came out, I was thrilled. I was like, oh, he's just going to be on the island the whole time. This is great. I'm going to love it. Spoiler, I liked it. I didn't love it. I liked it.
Liked it. I remember, speaking of like clips of the movie and other things, I remember I may have seen this before I saw the movie. It's hard to say. It was around the same time. I was pretty little. But when I was, to this day, I'm a huge fan of I Love Lucy. You and I have talked about this on this show.
I've had the weirdest hankering to watch I Love Lucy for the past week or so.
Nice.
You've just confirmed my need.
There you go.
Anyway, continue.
I had growing up a couple VHS box set of like all kinds of I Love Lucy, like outtakes and interesting stuff around it, and like documentaries and stuff. And I don't remember what it was called, but there was one thing that Lucy and Desi did when I Love Lucy was finished, and then they were doing the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour and all these other shows that they did afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
They had their own studio, Desi Lou Studios, which bought RKO Radio Pictures, which is the studio that made King Kong.
Oh, I did not know. I was wondering where RKO went. I did not know that Desi Lou bought it.
Desi Lou bought it, and then I think Paramount bought Desi Lou.
Yes, that sounds right. Somehow King Kong ended up at Universal, but that's
they
fine.
may have just licensed it to Universal, or maybe Universal now owns the property. I don't know.
Yeah.
But either way, I remember a segment where they were doing sort of showing the behind the scenes of all the classic movies that they now owned, and Lucy and Desi were showing some tourist guy who was like coming through the studio. He was like a proxy for the audience, right? And they were showing all these props from different movies and everything. And one of the things they had was the original like stop motion figurine of King Kong.
That is cool.
That they showed, and they were like, "Yeah, can you believe it? This is the original King Kong. He's only like 6 inches tall or 18 inches tall or whatever he is. But like, can you believe this was the move from the movie? It's because we used this thing called stop motion. Let me tell you about that real quick. For TV audiences in like 1960.
Sure. Who are like, yes, tell me more.
Yes.
Well, back then, famously, like Hollywood was very closed doors about Hollywood magic. No, it's the magic of Hollywood. That's where it comes from. You can't know how movies are made.
Yeah.
You must not.
And at the same time, so like it checks out that this show was airing around the same time that like Walt Disney was doing his weekly TV show called The Wonderful World of Disney. Sometimes called Disneyland. I think there were different series where he would kind of do the same thing and be like, oh, here's how he made Sleeping Beauty. Like, here's how he made that effect. Here's how we did this or that. Or like, we watched people actually dancing, and that's how we got the choreography for Peter Pan.
Right. Walt Disney's like the reason we have behind the scenes footage now.
He like invented that more or less.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a documentary from the 40s, I want to say, that's like, oh, this is Hollywood magic. This is what it is. And it's basically like, look, a set. And that's it. That's all you get.
I know.
It's so funny.
Because that was glamorous enough. Like, oh, look.
Wow, they're on sets. That's amazing. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Kong the original movie. Have you seen the one from the 70s?
I haven't.
It's no good. Don't bother.
That's what
Move
everyone's.
along.
That's the one where he climbs the Twin Towers instead of the Empire State Building. Never seen it. Seen that clip, but never seen the film.
Good in theory, loses its impact, I think.
It seems like they were going through a period of doing, like, in the 70s, you also had the remake of Miracle on 34th Street. You had, like, a lot of sort of remakes of classic.
Also, the Forgotten Miracle on 34th Street, right? I forgot that one even existed.
Yeah, the Sebastian Cabot one. A lot of remakes of classics mainly from the 30s and 40s, it seems, but kind of like what we're going through right now in Hollywood, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like this bout of remakes is better than what they were doing in the 70s.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it's like they learned from their remakes of the 70s, because now people who saw those movies as kids in the 70s like, oh, now we're in charge. So we can do it better than that.
Here's how not to remake a movie.
That's right. And then there's the 2005 Peter Jackson film that he was offered by Universal before he made Lord of the Rings. They were like, "Hey, you made The Frighteners is coming out. Do you want to, your Heavenly Creatures guy? Do you want to make King Kong?" And he's like, "I love King Kong. Tell me more." But he's Kiwi, so he's like, "Oh yeah, I love King Kong. Tell me more about it."
Piss off, Ghost.
and then Lord of the Rings was about to fall through, and then it ended up getting the funding and the approval and whatever else. So King Kong sat on the back burner, and like Universal Studios like sent them a statue or something like that with Kong fighting a T-Rex, and then when it like got delayed, they were like, "We're gonna take the statue back" or something like that, or it was like, or Peter Jackson or Weta sent them a statue to be like proof of concept. That's what it was. Proof of concept. Look at this cool statue. Look what we can do. And then they like took it back afterwards. They were like, "Give us our statue back. We're not making the movie with you yet." Now it sits outside Weta Workshop or Weta Digital, I think, in New Zealand.
Gotcha.
Did you said you've seen the Peter Jackson one?
I have, yeah. It's pretty good. It's a quite good movie. It just doesn't have the same like charm that the 33 one does to me.
I would agree with that. I think his Peter Jackson's Kong is vastly underrated. I think it's really excellent. It's really an excellent film. It's about 20 minutes too long. It's the original Kong is 2 hours, and it's brisk. It's a really brisk 2 hours. Like that one could stand to be a little bit longer for things like character development, things like that. And then, but Peter Jackson had to add a character in that he had to say like make us care about Kong in his version, which is he's a much more sympathetic, like he's an animal. People have encroached on his space and they've taken him away from him. And Anne is still, she's not really culpable because she has no idea they're going to take him or anything like that, but because she bonds with him in this version, there's more reason for her to say like be with him at his end,
sure.
which I really like, and it's a really pretty film. Peter Jackson, I read an interview with him, and he was like, "I never rewatch my movies." He said, "But just recently I was in a hotel and it was on TV, so I like watched most of it." And he's like, it's actually good.
I stand by it.
I stand by it, but it's 20 minutes too long."
He said that too.
He's
wow.
like, I should have cut this, and this.
Funny.
It was too long.
Funny.
Yeah. But I like that it like takes the stuff that original Kong kind of skirts over, like the depression and soup lines and why Anne is like, "Yeah, I'll go to an island, whatever. Let's go. Let's go."
Yeah.
I enjoy that aspect of the film, and I love Jack Black's Carl Denham.
I actually really like Jack Black's performance. I really like his performance in that film. Yeah.
He's so good. We'll donate the proceeds to his wife and children. Like, oh, no, you won't. No, you won't.
It's good. It's good. It's probably a better movie than I remember. I saw it a long time. I saw it way back when Netflix was only discs in the mail.
Whoa.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking like this is a good movie, and it's probably a better movie than the 33 original, but the 33 original has such charm to it, that it's hard to outdo it in its own way.
Here's the thing. I can watch Peter Jackson King Kong or Kong Skull Island and be like, "I know how you did that." I can watch the 33 one and go, "I still don't know how you made it look like that."
I know, it's crazy.
And I know it's miniatures and bigatures and trick shots and this, and it's all deception, but it doesn't matter because you've deceived me. I know other King Kong movies are just made in a computer.
And it's all happening in camera, right? Like
Even if it's
stop motion, even if it's forced perspective, even if it's miniatures, whatever it is, it's still happening in camera. And that's the kind of the mind-boggling thing.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And that's the movie magic that we just talked about that's kind of lost that. But to kind of wrap up, I saw King Kong the musical very recently, which is kind of what prompted this conversation in the first place. I went to New York with co-host of Academy Rewind, Palmer. We went to go see it. Mind-boggling. Like, the puppet is truly mind-boggling. The music is instantly forgettable. Like, it's just it's not good. It's not bad, actually. The music's not. It's just like, yeah, I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard it. I don't remember what you're singing about, feelings and stuff. I get you. And I'm I mean, like, we're musical fans, but there's nothing memorable about the music in that show, except actually Kong's theme. There's like an actual like soundtrack to when he shows up, and it's just as good as Max Steiner's music or Howard Shore's. It's like, well, I mean, it's in that vein. Steiner defined that style of music, and so so they just follow in that trend. But they fix a couple of the things that King Kong has always kind of struggled with, and does not have a love interest anymore. Original King Kong, like, it's bad luck to have a dame on ship, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And then Peter Jackson's version of that, that's part of the movie he's making, but they don't say it out loud, like, to her. They're okay with her on ship, but then in the movie he makes, they're like, it's bad luck to have a dame on board. And she's like, oh, in this one, they like actively say that to her and distrust her in that way. So she has to earn their respect because it was an old sailing mentality to not bring a woman on board a ship. But there's no love story at all. They completely eliminate Jack Driscoll. It's just Carl Denham and Anne. And she is a struggling actress who is basically sleeping in Central Park and like want of food. And so he convinces her to go on this voyage, because one of her songs wants to be, quote, the Queen of New York, right? She wants stardom. She doesn't just want food. She wants to be big. And so Denham convinces her after she's rescued by Kong and then escapes. He convinces her to play the damsel in distress again because they know Kong will come for her. So she is culpable in them taking Kong back to New York. She chooses to bring him back and then regrets that decision and helps him to escape and blah, blah, blah. So it gives her a much different, more well-rounded character.
It sounds like it. It sounds like a much more well-rounded character, and it sounds like a character more fitting for Broadway.
Yes,
than the
absolutely.
film version. Yeah,
absolutely. And then Denham's character, who is still kind of like, I want to make a film, blah, 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 but it's a little Hollywood commentary where he tells her, like, you will go out on stage and you will introduce the eighth wonder of the world because I made you and I will destroy you. He gets wrapped up in his own search for stardom in the same way because he's trying to clear debts because it's the Depression and like all of this. So it's that stuff. Like, so the book itself is great and the puppet is tremendously good. 2,000 pounds, and it's operated in the Japanese style, so like they're all clad in black and they move him, but he's voiced live every night by one of the people that control him is called the King's Company. That's what they've dubbed themselves, and one of the people like perform him every night in a voice modulator, so he is authentically reacting to the performance every night as opposed to them working off of canned sounds.
I really like that. I really like that. So you said the people, the King's Company are visible on stage. They're wearing black, but they're sort of
That's
right.
Are
they're using like sticks and stuff to manipulate the puppet or
no, he pulleys, and then they actually will like pick up his arm and move it.
Got it.
And stuff like that. But Kong can pick Anne up and like hold her and run with her and like all. It's very very impressive, and it's so impressive you forget they're there. Like he's on stage and he's fighting a prehistoric creature on stage, like another big puppet, and you forget they're all there, that they're making it happen because you're so enthralled with the actual performance of the puppet. It's incredibly impressive.
Sounds like it. It really does. It's making me sad that it's closing on Broadway because I I wish I could see it. It sounds really freaking cool. Hopefully it will tour.
Tickets were. It's going to Shanghai. It's not. It's one of those.
I'm not though. So
right. Well, I know, it's a. I think it's one of those shows like you have to rig the theater for him.
Yeah. It sounds like a very unique, probably very expensive production to mount.
Right, and so which is why I think he's going to Shanghai.
Right.
He's going to tour where people will take him.
They're physically bringing the puppet to.
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
So there you go.
Because they've been working on the musical for like 10 years. It started in Australia, and then it finally made it to Broadway, and now it's off to Shanghai. So it had about a year run on Broadway. It won a Tony Award for a special effects achievement, basically.
It sounds like it deserved it.
Yeah, the rest of it didn't. The story's fine, but and good, and tweaks a couple of good things, but man, it makes you remember why Kong is so impressive no matter what. Whether it's its themes or the character of King Kong himself, it's just super cool.
That sounds awesome. And as somebody who grew up with the sort of an affinity for this, and you know, I've always sort of considered myself a not a hardcore fan, like people who would really know every little detail of it, but something that it's always been something that oh yeah, I like King Kong. That's add that to my list of sort of action movie things that I enjoy.
That's right.
In many ways, it's one of the first real action movies. One of the first successful action movies, right? Monster movies.
Really successful science fiction monster movies. It's like taking that universal horror style and ramping it up to a bigger, extraordinary event.
And one of the first examples of one that crossed over into the mainstream and stayed there.
Right. It's still hanging around.
And it's not a geek movie per se. It's just a classic film.
That's right. I would never consider King Kong a geek film. It's a classic film in the vein of Wizard of Oz or Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind. But even Wizard of Oz is a great example of it's a fantasy movie. But it's not a fantasy movie. It's a classic movie.
Right.
And I think King Kong sits in that same vein. But any final thoughts on King Kong? Arg, indeed. Well, you can find us at beerwithgeeks.com and Facebook and Gmail and Twitter. Tell us, what do you think about King Kong? You can find Frank on Twitter at Frank Ramblings and myself at TimothyPG13. You can rate and review us on iTunes. Find us other places podcasts can be found, and head over to our patreon.com/laughableaudio to help support the show. Help Frank go see King Kong, things like that.
Make it happen. We should also mention you joined me on Shoe Krypton a couple weeks ago at this point, but that was a lot of fun. If anybody watches Krypton, you want to hear me and Tim talk about it, because we had a great time recapping episode 3 of this season. So like I said, it's been a week or two at this point, but still, if you're watching Krypton and you're trying to sort of stay fresh on what's happening this season, go check out Shoe. KryptonPodcast.net would be the easiest way to find it. And that was a lot of fun that we got to geek out on that together.
That was a lot of fun. And I will say, for people who are like, Krypton, I don't know, blah blah blah, it's worth your time. The first season, I thought myself, because I'm not on True Krypton, so I feel like I can say this, it was a little slow. It took a little while to get going, but it really ramped up by the end of season 2.
Oh boy, did it!
I mean, by the end of the season, and then season 2 has not let off that steam at all. It is just so fun and clever and really geeky, and it's real science fiction. It is. It's not like, oh, we're comic books or whatever. It's it's science fiction in the world of comic books.
Yeah.
And I'm loving the hell out of it. So good stuff.
Hell yeah.
Well, Frank, until next time. Cheers.